Hi everyone and welcome. We're into my wormery and today we're going to be visiting in on a tub of mine. This tub here has been holding a batch of harvested finished compost, vermicompost, for 50 days now. And I believe it's been 8 days since we last checked in on it. At that time we were baiting out the worms that might still occupy the bin, or even baby worms that might actually be hatching in this bin. So the assumption over the past number of weeks has been that the material probably has some cocoons in it, probably will have hatchlings, and we're just making an effort before finally considering this as a finished batch of vermicompost. We've been trying to fish out those baby worms and any baby worms that we're able to, or even mature worms that snuck through the screening process when we harvested. Any worms that we're able to collect, we've been putting over into one of my older tubs. I guess that middle one over there on the lower shelf in the lighter color container. Up until not too long ago, until just a few days ago, that was always my youngest worm bin, but the one next to it to the left is now the newest as of a few days ago. But just to stick with what we've been doing so far, all the worms that we've ever collected out of this in our baiting efforts have always gone into that tub. So we're going to stick to that, and after 50 days, I'm wondering if it's going to be the last time we do this. It wasn't so long ago that I did a very similar setup to this with a similar sized tub, similar process, baiting worms out of it over a number of weeks, numerous times. And by the time we got to the 50th day and we pulled out the last batch of baited worms, we had deemed that material as pretty much depopulated and good to go into storage. So, not sure what to expect here. I don't even have food today. Kind of hoping that we do have the same outcome, is that no more baiting is needed, but if need be, I've got material up in the freezer that we could reload the bait bomb with, get it back up on the shelf for a little bit longer. But after 50 days, I'm really hoping we can call it a done deal with this tub. So I'm going to put a glove on so that we can get to work on this and see how things are coming along. So I have here a little tub that we can place the worms that we collect into, assuming that we collect some worms. So what you're going to see here is the vermicompost out here, left to air out a little bit, let it dry off while it's undergoing this process with this piece of plastic intended to facilitate recirculation of moisture, but only over where this baiting zone is. So let's see how it's doing. I don't see any worms on the plastic. Oh, no, I do. They're a little bit difficult to see because they are little itsy bitsy baby worms. This guy on top, though, that's not a baby worm. It's a fairly mature worm, actually, and had the brains to go up on top to enjoy the moisture collecting on that piece of paper as it condenses on the plastic and drops down. So let's see here. Oh, feisty. Let's get this little guy into the box. That's where our worms belong anyhow, right? Here's some paper we'd placed over the baiting box, more as a curiosity, just to see how much longer the paper can remain intact, I guess. It doesn't really serve too much of another purpose there. Not sure if this guy's heading in or out. I just noticed him, but let's get him in. The contents of this little box are really rich castings. I came in here actually the last time we checked in on here. I think I said it was 8 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. But I did check in here not too long ago, just a few days ago, when I was feeding cantaloupe to some other bins, and I had a little left over, so I threw the leftovers into here to try to spur on the evacuation process. So I'm hoping we've got ourselves a good haul of worms hanging out in here. Usually I'll assume that there might also be other worms in the nearby vicinity, maybe just in this neighboring casting material. So I'll always check there next, just to see if maybe they caught a little glimpse of the bright light and had a chance to squirm out of view and retreat into the material. Now I'm already noticing very difficult to catch these little guys. They're so small. Got myself a little tiny red wiggler over here hanging out on this piece of vermicompost, and I saw another one over here, but I lost track of it. Seems to have already squirmed out of view. And that's kind of what we've been expecting, right? So we've gone into this whole process with the expectation of having left a whole bunch of unhatched cocoons, eggs in the material, and that within a short period of time we'd have a good number of hatchlings emerging into the material. And I think every time we disrupt a little bit of the material, you could see right away there's little tiny worms everywhere, juvenile worms all over the place of various sizes. Some of them look like they might have already been around for a day or two. Some of them are so tiny they look like they might have just emerged from their cocoon. This one is still burrowed into its little private little chunk of whatever that is. So this is where I kind of draw the line. I'm really not going to be interested in trying to pick worms out of this material, because it does seem like you could just go nuts with this. Busting it up into little tinier chunks just to find another tinier worm next to the one you just picked out, and it could certainly lead to a fair bit of what seems to me like unnecessary work. Unnecessary work for a human, right? Because I guess the whole idea behind doing all this stuff this way is to, I guess I'll quote one of our fellow worm enthusiasts, let the worms do the work, right? Instead of going nuts trying to do some of the work that they'll do on their own in terms of, getting out of the material for you, they'll voluntarily leave this material once it becomes a little less hospitable and lacking in nutrients. But at the moment, we're still just inundated with tons and tons of them still emerging from their cocoons and just trying to get themselves oriented to their new world. So I'm certainly not prepared to start picking through this material to try to pull out each of these individual little tiny worms. There are many of them, so it almost seems like we've got enough here to start a whole fresh bin just the way it is. We've got so many baby worms in this material. So the baiting station is definitely going to get reloaded. I'll have to grab some food from the freezer so we could toss it back into that box after we empty it and sink that back down into the material here, put this back up on the shelf and let it continue. And after 50 days, some people might start getting a little bit impatient, but I think I even mentioned in my last video when we last checked in on this bin that regardless of how long it takes, I think we'll actually see the process through until we really feel that we're not observing any more baby worms in the material and that we've really got truly evacuated compost. So I've got my gardens already planted, and I've got plenty of castings in storage that I could use for top dressing during the season. So kind of out of a curiosity to see how long it actually might take, I think we're just going to keep going with this thing. We'll set up another baiting station. We'll empty this so we can relocate the worms, and we'll fetch some fresh food to put in here in the place of what we remove. I guess I'll do what I usually do, and I'll just dump it out, see how much of it we're able to successfully eject in one shot. Not much. Stuff's in there pretty good. I'm gonna need to use a tool to extract it. I got this piece of stick. I always try to do this in a fairly gentle ginger way, so I'm not squashing or killing any worms in the process. Oh boy, now we got a good number of worms hanging out here. It does seem like they've more or less depleted most of the food that was given to them. This is all castings for the most part. Here, maybe we're still seeing a little chunk of something orange. Maybe it's the cantaloupe that I threw in not too long ago to keep this thing well fed. Guess I just haven't had enough time to knock it all out, but they definitely put a dent in it because it was a fair amount that I placed in here. I think we got a better haul this time than last time, or at least it seems that way to me. We got a good number of worms here, that's for sure. And, obviously we've got some good size, mature worms in here, but also a good number of little baby ones as well. They're so tiny. Over on this side, if I spin it around, I can see a whole bunch more little guys all over here on the wall. Let's see if we can fish these guys out too. And I guess kind of like last time, I'm not going to go too nuts trying to fish every last one of these little guys out. In the process, I'll probably end up squashing them. So I think I'll just go for kind of that, high 90s percentage of having gotten most of them. And those few that remain in the material here, we'll get them next go around. How does that sound? Pretty nice haul, and pretty good timing on, needing to reload this bait bomb because it's, for the most part, depleted. Those last few chunks of food in there are important for keeping who's in here, keeping them there. But it wouldn't have lasted much longer, I don't think, because there is a good number of worms over here. Why don't we cut these little guys loose in their new home, and we'll see if we can get some good footage, maybe a little bit of worms squirming out of view, getting cozy in their new space. All right, let's get to work on that. We've got this plastic covering, just trying to keep the whole space in the bin nice and cozy for worms. Man, look at all those castings, just covered in castings. Not only is this going to get a little fresh injection of worm population today, I believe it's due for a feeding, but I just wanted to take care of this worm relocation. Now, if I do get around to feeding it later today, maybe I'll just shoot some separate video. But for now, I just wanted to get this baiting round done on day 50, since it was kind of a notable day, since that was the day that we ended the last such process, similar process. But here, I think what we'll do is we'll just get these little guys into their new space, cover them back up, and if feeding is required, then we'll see about doing that in another get-together. Wonder how this coffee filter's holding up. Not very good, it seems. They always chew right through it when it's over where the food is. I love how this material looks. It always looks so cool when there's like a fresh coating of castings covering everything. So I'll place those back where they were, but let's reintroduce these guys into the picture. Set this aside as well, and we could probably just drop these guys in just as is, as a whole. Did we get everyone? Now we got everyone. This is the time to check out what we've succeeded in accomplishing here before they all squirm out of view. Try to get a rough sense of how many worms assembled in this round of baiting. It's also nice to sort of see the cross-section of different sizes, different maturity levels of the worms in here. Obviously, we've got some good size mature worms hanging out in here. They've been around for a while, but we also see a good number of little babies all over the place. Here's some of that food material that they'd been given last time. We'll just let them have that here, and we'll get some fresh stuff to reload those boxes with. Get a little bit more paper. I can feel chunks of food right under the surface here, so I'm sure this bin is doing okay. Might not be desperate yet for food. But usually I just like to stick to my schedule for the most part. I like to keep a steady supply of food heading into these bins on a pretty regular basis. Some people think it might be considered as almost overfeeding, but I never seem to see any problems because of it, so I'll just continue generously feeding like I always have. And luckily there's always a chance to check out some worms hanging out too. So there's not much left to see here. These little guys hustled out of view here because of the bright overhead lights we've got. One or two of them are still out here. Not too concerned, but we'll probably be retreating from this bright light as well soon. But instead of just continuing to expose them to this bright light, why don't we just actually cover them up and let them get comfortable again. We're done doing what we intended to do here. Check in on our 50-day-old tub where we're just trying to allow the depopulation of baby worms, and the worms that we did manage to round up on this attempt have now been released into their new home. Alright, well, there's a little bit of cleanup and putting away to be done here, but that's not too interesting, so I won't keep you around for that. But before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching my videos. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, put them in the comment section below. I always look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts and ideas and input on what's happening here in my worm farm. And I also get great tips from a lot of people that have a lot more knowledge in this activity than I do, so I always really appreciate that as well. So thanks again for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, as always, please remember to give me a quick thumbs up. That's really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.